podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
No brakes, no brakes, no fear, no fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Coming up this week, more reaction from the National Speedway Stadium as the Belle Vue Aces extend their lead at the top of the Sports Insure Premiership. We hear from Norick Blodorn.
Just what I know, it's easy track for me to ride on, and just enjoyed tonight, and to get the win against Wolves just made it even better.
It was all abandoned after 10 heats at Allerton Stadium as the Sheffield Tigers keep the pressure up on the Ipswich Witches for that final qualifying spot for the playoffs.
It's the way it goes. Look, as I mentioned before, we like to come to work and leave in one piece. There is a result from doing the Heat 10. We are in front.
We'll hear more from Josh Pickering in a bit, and our main feature interview is with the man who's now in charge of his former team. Boss of the Kings Lynn Stars, Dave Hoggart, joins us.
We've got to go for every single point. We can't, we've got to be thinking no lost places, and when we're at home, we've got to think about hitting the opposition early, right from the start of the meeting, and maximising those opportunities.
And Eurosport's Kelvin Tatum gives us his mid-season report.
I had to sort of eat a bit of humble pie when I saw Mark Lemon at Peterborough the other day, because I didn't think they were as strong as they were last year. And the form of Jarman Lidsey in the middle of the team has really been a revelation.
And there's interviews with Hans Andersen, Richie Worrall and Rob Lyon from the Peterborough Panthers. We also catch up with Peter Adams of the Wolverhampton Wolves. All that and much more on the way on British Speedway's official podcast. No brakes, no fear.
No brakes, no fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
Lots to come then, and we start at the National Speedway Stadium, where the Belle Vue Aces lead at the top of the Sports Insure Premiership moves up to 9 points after an emphatic 57-33 win over Wolverhampton at the National Speedway Stadium on Monday night. The Aces race clear in the second half of the meeting, limiting the second-place team to just 3 race wins in a dominant performance. Skipper Brady Kurtz with 13 plus 1 bonus point, and Dan Bewley with 11 plus 1 led the way, whilst Jack Smith stepped in as a guest for rising star Jake Mulford, who was injured over the course of the weekend, and he was involved in a big 5-1 in Heat 8 with Norick Blodorn. Wolves skipper Sam Masters won 2 races and finished on 10 points, but the Midlands side suffered their heaviest defeat of the season. Let's hear from some of those involved in the fixture. Coming up then, we'll hear from Peter Adams, the Wolves team manager, and Rory Schlein soon, but first, one of the stars of the show, Norick Blodorn, speaking with Lee Wild.
Norick, great to have you back in England after a tough couple of weeks for injuries. You look like you enjoyed yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely. I know it would be good to come back on a home track, because that's just what I know. It's easy track for me to ride on, and just enjoyed tonight, and to get the win against Wolves just made it even better.
Big home performance. You take a lot of aggregate points. To Wolves next Monday. That's a more difficult track for you, isn't it? How do you find the tighter, more technical Wolves?
Yeah, that's what I already talked about, Haley. It's tough. I watched the boys the last time. They were pretty impressive, so I think we could even go for a win, even though it will be super, super tough. But like you said, for me, it's always a bit tough going there. But at some point, you need to figure it out, and maybe it's the time for me. But it won't be easy for me, that's for sure, because especially like the weekend I got Poland, so big slick track, and then going to Wolves won't make it any easier. But I just try my best, and because around Ipswich I'm doing pretty good now, so it's like no excuses not getting around smaller tracks, so why not?
Absolutely. And just quickly, finally, you had your friend Selina Liebman here tonight with the Women's Speedway Academy. That's fantastic to see the progress they're making, isn't it?
No, definitely, and she really looked impressive today. I've never saw her riding that fast, so props to her. No, and I think it's just cool to get them involved here, and nice job from the club, and just good to have them here as well.
Norick, thank you very much.
Cheers.
It was a big day, actually, at Belle Vue with the launch of the ATPI Women's Academy, which is going to be doing big things, not just for women's speedway in this country, but around the whole world, and supported by the FIM as well. So watch out for more details and watch this space. And certainly the footage I saw, Selina Liebman looked very quick around the National Speedway Stadium, as she has been at a few of the tracks she's visited through the course of this summer so far. Well, what about the Wolves Wolves side of the camp then. Let's hear from Rory Schlein speaking to Mike Taylor from BBC Radio WM. Mike does get drowned out occasionally with his questions with passing bikes. They were doing the flat track racing after the main event, and so you can hear Rory's answers though. Here we are with Rory Schlein and Mike Taylor.
Started reasonably well, and don't know, we just seemed to go off the boil. So it's always a hard place to come to, but we always seem to enjoy ourselves here. But tonight was just hard work.
Yeah, I suppose it stings a bit more because it's been so unusual this season. It's so competitive away from home.
Yeah, there was no lack of effort. Everyone was trying to get the setup, and I think that's where we just come up short. They had so much straight line speed, and we couldn't find any.
You've got a quick chance to put it right next week, and of course at Ipswich on Thursday, which is somewhere you've got very well.
Yeah, obviously, the only way to bounce back after a poor result is obviously to get a result, straight up. So, track we all enjoy, and the mental approach and how we go about our business won't change on Thursday.
There's Rory Schlein. The league table may be slightly deceptive, Belle Vue fans. 9 points clear, Belle Vue at the moment, having ridden 16 meetings. However, Wolves have only ridden 12 meetings, so they've got the 4 matches in hand. Win all of those, claim the bonus points. Of course, it's going to close up very quickly. Same can be said for Leicester or indeed Sheffield. But Wolves have the return back at Monmore against the Belle Vue Aces next Monday, as we heard in that piece there earlier. So Belle Vue will be looking to continue the momentum that they've been on lately, and not so much the form that they had last time on their visit, where of course they were hammered by Wolves earlier in the season around Monmore. Let's hear from the Wolves team manager then on that fixture next week, and also looking back at Monday night, here's Peter Adams with BBC's Mike Taylor.
Peter, that was a tough one against a really good side.
Yeah, not our best performance of the season by a long shot, and not enough heat winners and too many passengers. It was as simple as that. But take nothing away from Belle Vue. They were very good today, and they look set fair, obviously, for the playoffs.
Yeah. You had a couple of chances early in the meeting. You were briefly ahead, and there was another heat where Brady Kurtz had to work his way through. It just looked like after that it just fell away.
Yeah, there were 3-5-1s in 4 heats in the middle part of the match, and that's happened to us so many times over the recent sort of years. But no, they were in just irresistible form, and you've just got to say that we were beaten by a much better team on the day.
You're straight off to Ipswich, of course, now later in the week, somewhere where you have gone very well this season.
Well, we've gone very well here.
Yeah, well, true.
Just because you've done well anywhere in the past is no guarantee of what's going to happen the next time. But what's always important in situations like this is how you bounce back, how you react. So we'll be looking for a big reaction on Thursday, obviously, and a much better result.
And just one more thing, how close is Luke now? I know he had the operation last week, didn't he?
Last Tuesday, and I spoke to him today. He's targeting the Peterborough match at Monmore as his comeback day. I think that's a fortnight tonight, is it? Personally, I think that's a bit ambitious because it's a nasty injury he's got. He's not in a cast or anything, it's just repaired and strapped up. And he's doing little bits of physiotherapy, but he set his heart on riding on that day, so we'll see whether he makes it or not. But I just saw here tonight, he's a big miss.
So, all right, that's great.
I believe you're using a guest on Thursday at Ipswich rather than RR. Tonight you had to give Dougie 7 rides. That's not easy, but you've got a guest coming in on Thursday?
Yeah, it's Belle Vue's a very difficult track to pick a guest for because, you can either go very well here or you can have, a poor performance here. Just a perfect example of that was Steve Worrall today. He's ridden brilliantly here for us in matches gone by, but today just didn't happen for him, for one reason or another. So very difficult, as I say, to be sure about a score when you bring in a guest, here. Tracks like Ipswich that, we're more comfortable on perhaps, a bit easier to predict. So, Scott Nichols has agreed to guest for us on Thursday, and he did sterling work for us earlier on in the season, so hoping he can keep that up at a track he traditionally goes well at.
Yeah, not a bad choice, I guess, to take to Vauxhall. Scott Nicholls lining up once again in Wolves colours this Thursday when Wolves take on the Witches. Well, the Sheffield Tigers were comfortable 37-23 winners over Peterborough in a Sports Insure Premiership match which was curtailed after 10 races. The Ollerton circuit was hit by a couple of heavy showers, resulting in race times dropping by around seconds, and a halt was called after Heat 10. Jack Holder scored a 9-point maximum for the hosts, with Josh Pickering adding 7+1 bonus. Richie Worrall top scored for the Panthers with 6. Well, we'll hear from Richie Worrall himself in a moment after the other top scorer for the Sheffield Tigers, 7+1 for Josh Pickering, and he's just thankful to get out of there in one piece.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. The track was beautiful. We had a bit of rain here throughout the day, which was a little bit concerning earlier on, like about midday, you didn't know which way it was going to go, but by the time we got here at 5 p.m, the track looked great. It rode very well for the opening heats, and then when that shower come across, it sort of ruined it for everyone.
Yeah, and like you say, those heat 8, 9 and 10, we did get the races through, but they were quite sketchy throughout.
Yeah, it wasn't nice, mate. A few of the boys went out in them heats, including myself, and to be honest, here's a bit of proof of how wet it can be. So it's the way it goes. Like, as I mentioned before, we like to come to work and leave in one piece. There is a result from doing the Heat 10. We are in front. So on a Sheffield point of view, we are happy in a way, but at the same time, it was both parties that contributed to making the decision.
Yeah, and it's not just the conditions underneath you as well. Like you say, it's also the visibility, which was becoming a real issue if you were second, third or fourth.
At the end of the day, yes, we are professional sportsmen. We can ride a track like this. We can ride anything. However, we can't race it when you've got 4 guys going into the one spot of the track where we all would like to be. Obviously, visibility comes at a cost. You've also got the sun going into turn 3, which is also a bit of an issue any day. And then when the track's that wet and icy, it can be quite dangerous.
Yep, just finally, like you say, it's 2 points on the board, and now on to Thursday, a return to Kings Lynn for yourself as well. Nevertheless, your mind's focused on getting the job done with the Tigers again.
Yeah, look, it's no different for me. I wish Kings Lynn all the best. They were good to me while I was there. It was a shame that when we did separate under the circumstances, with my shoulder was no good. When I sort of become good, and then obviously we sort of seen where the teams were available. They did have a 1-7 at the time, and it was unfortunate on their behalf that I already committed to Sheffield when Tofty got injured. So it's just how Speedway is sometimes, and I just got to focus on what I'm doing right now, and I'm happy where I am.
Yeah, and on that Kings Lynn note, Dave Hoggart on the way in part 2, the new Kings Lynn team manager, former Sheffield team manager and promoter as well, of course, and Josh Pickering lining up at his former side. It's got all sorts of drama written around that one, but more about Kings Lynn in the next bit. Let's hear from Richie Worrall right now. Of course, he was top scorer for the Peterborough Panthers before that meeting was stopped a little early after 10 heats. Here he is speaking with Ryan Guest.
Well, Richie Worrall, meeting abandoned after 10 races here at Sheffield tonight. You were out in Heat 8 when that first sharp shower came down. How bad was it out there?
That race was terrible. It did seem to get a little bit better as the water kind of soaked in, but for that Heat 8, just fresh, it was pretty airy because it was the first one to that outside, and then that was that. The rest was just getting filled in. Whereas the races after that, we had a little break. The race after that was round the inside of the normal racing line, but guys were going nowhere. The racing was only the first 10 metres, if that, and then it was just followed later. And quite dangerous. The sun was a factor. The fans don't really know about that, so we're blind going into 3, and it's ice with also bits of traction. So it was dangerous. Yeah, it was, and it was. The majority vote said no. Yeah. No, we're all here to make money. Yeah. Majority vote said no. I know the fans aren't happy about it, but it is what it is, and rider safety comes first.
Yeah, up until that point, I think you were the first race winner for the visitors as well in that Heat 8. Up until that point, when conditions were normal, it was another tough night for the Panthers up until then.
Yeah, Sheffield, tough team, especially here, so we knew it was always going to be a tough night. Vadim is our star man at the moment, and he took a race to get settled in, didn't he? But once he did, I think he went second win. So, look, it's tough. It's been tough for the Panthers this year, one reason or another. The obvious one, not having number one for the majority of the time. We're trying our best. Just got to keep going.
Yeah. Nevertheless, this Thursday back in Premiership action at Leicester. Obviously, it was a brilliant night for yourself there last Thursday, and you'll certainly be looking to take that into that one with you.
Yeah, if I can do the same again, that'd be nice. I do go pretty quick round there, so we'll see how Thursday goes. The weather plays ball, and we put that same engine back in with everything else the same, and it should do the same stuff. But Speedway never really works like that, does it?
Yeah, and from the team point of view, like you say, it has been a tough old slog. But you have got a 1-7. Leicester are banging form and strong at home. But nevertheless, it's almost a case of nothing to lose for the Panthers between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, nothing to lose. Let's just go and try and get some points, try and get some wins, give the fans something to be happy about, and win some races and make some money. Yeah, there's not really much more we can do.
Now, Richie Worrall certainly likes life around Leicester. We saw that in the Premiership pairs. We'll touch on that towards the end of the podcast, actually, because there was a lot went on in that meeting and more silverware for the Belle Vue Aces. But first of all, let's now hear from team manager of the Peterborough Panthers, Rob Lyon, who explains a little bit more about the decision for the meeting to be abandoned. A lot of people saying, well, Sheffield forced that when it got to Heat 10. Not the case, because it requires the away side to agree to things like this. So it's not just like Sheffield go to the referee and say that's it, all over. The away team have to have the final say, actually, when it comes to these things. So here's Rob Lyon explaining the decision to abandon things after 10 heats at Overton on Monday.
Well, Rob Lyon, tonight's meeting here at Sheffield called to a halt after 10 races. Both camps more or less in the same position as well, with half wanting to carry on, but a slight majority with 4 riders from each side just finding it a bit too dangerous.
Yeah, I said to my guys, ultimately your safety is my concern, and I need a collective view on what your thoughts are going forward. And there was a majority vote that they felt it was unsafe to continue. And I think the Sheffield boys felt it was a similar situation as you say. Referee made a call based on that information. It is a shame, but it was rideable, but not raceable.
Yeah, and like you say, Richie Worrall going out, winning Heat 8, and then Vadim picking up his first race win of the evening. And even when he came back in, he expressed his concerns, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and I think you have to see Adam Ellis's goggles in Heat 9, I think it was, and he couldn't see a thing. It's these bikes these days are difficult. At the best of times, I'm sure the boys will tell you that. So. They ride them, and you have to take into consideration their views. It's hard on the fans, I get that. Difficult call, but I think it's the right decision.
Yep, the meeting itself, up until that point, I know it took you till that midpoint of the meeting to get your first race winner. It was tough, certainly in those first few corners and away from the tapes.
Yeah, it was. I think we've only probably had Ben Basso and Hans has been around here many, many times, but I think Ben Basso and Richie were probably the only boys that shown any sort of form here in the last couple of years. The other boys either hadn't been here much at all or not at all, in Vadim's case certainly. But yeah, they were getting used to it, as you saw. But like I say, one of those, isn't it?
Rob, many thanks for speaking to us.
No worries.
Well, if there was a side that benefited from the poor conditions, it probably was Peterborough, who got their only heat advantage during the treacherous conditions. A lot of fans, though, seeing the picture of the blue sky and the sunshine out at Overton and questioning why more time wasn't taken to get the meeting back on again. But the decision really was that the damage was done both on the scoreline and on the track, and the track being raceable but not rideable. Let's hear the thoughts of Hans Andersen now, of the Peterborough Panthers, who rode during those conditions. And he explains to Andy Abbott of BBC Radio Cambridgeshire about the decision to call the meeting off at Heat 10.
There weren't a full team of riders who was wanting to ride. It was sort of mixed. The thing with the track was it was rideable but not raceable. And to be fair, we've done enough heats for the score to stand. And it might have been a bit different if the scoreline would have been a bit closer. There you go. I had to stick by the majority of the team, and the majority of the team, they've said, oh, well, let's call it now when everyone's in one piece. And for the home side, they were the same. They could carry on if they wanted to, but they were also like, let's call it.
I mean, it was only a short, sharp shower, but what, from a rider's point of view, makes it more difficult and you're not able to race on it?
Well, it's difficult when the track, like I said, the track was rideable but not raceable, because you can see there weren't any passing because you couldn't do anything, because with all the water on the track, you sort of just hung on for dear life on the track. But it was mixed feelings. obviously we hoped for more, because it would have been nice to come here today and turn them over. But, you know, again, it wasn't an easy task, but the track condition didn't help.
I suppose the sun going into bend 3, it was not going to help, because obviously if you filled in and then the sun, it's going to make visibility impossible, isn't it?
Well, we did 2 races in the rain. I was obviously out in the last one before it got cancelled, and we couldn't see anything because you had water on your lens and sun straining your eyes, so your view was sort of like looking everywhere. It's like driving your car with water on the screen without using the windscreen wire, but you can't see through it.
Yeah, it's a good explanation. But from your point of view, a little bit returned to form tonight, good to see.
Yeah, well, it's been no secret, I've been struggling, but it's been down to some issues with the bike, because I've raced plenty of laps to know whether it's just me riding poorly or if it's the equipment, and I've had some issues with the bike. It doesn't really matter if the bike's not doing it for you, it doesn't matter if it's Ty Woofington or whoever sits on it, it's not going to perform. Yeah, but we made sure. I made some changes in the workshop this morning, and you know it was better. And I was coming out of the gate, and you know had speed. I was pushing Michelle in that race as well. So yeah, it was nice in that way to actually see that things are improving.
I mean, you're going to Leicester Thursday night. You've ridden there regularly. You know the track. You get make a few more adjustments to fit your style of riding, and can do something on Thursday night.
Yeah, we can. You know, you got to remember when we was there early in the season, we actually pushed them pretty good earlier, and we go there with the superstar Worrall at the moment. You know, he seems nearly unbeatable around Leicester, so it's good. I think they probably fear us more than we fear them, which is good.
And Vadim Tarasenko around Leicester?
He's a quality rider. You know, you see, he went to Ipswich, and you know, he got around the track, scored some points. So yeah, he'll probably take him a ride, maybe 2 at Leicester, but then he'll be fine.
So looking at the Sports Insure Premiership situation as it stands, then, as we've already touched on, the Belle Vue Aces top of the table, but they have ridden more meetings than everyone else by quite some way. 16 meetings ridden. They're on 29 points. Next in second place is Wolves, who've ridden the second highest amount of meetings on 12 ridden and on 20 points. So you can see from the matches available and, of course, the points available, it could still close up fairly tightly on Belle Vue yet. However, Wolves and Belle Vue face each other next Monday. Leicester are in third. They've ridden 11 meetings on 20 points, so we're joint on points at the moment with Wolves and a match in hand. One to watch there. Sheffield Tigers are in fourth. They've ridden 11 and on 15 points. Ipswich Witches are in fifth, ridden 12 meetings and 13 points. Sheffield and Ipswich facing each other next Monday at Oleton. That's a big one for the playoff picture. And then at the bottom end of the table, we've got the King's Lynn Stars in sixth place, ridden 12 on 7 points, and the Peterborough Panthers on at the seventh place at the bottom, ridden 12 and on 2 points. So that's the Sports Insure Premiership table situation. Looking at the fixtures coming up then, Thursday. All these fixtures are in round 2 of the Sports Insure Premiership, with the Ipswich Witches up against the Wolverhampton Wolves. Scott Nichols guesting for Wolves in that one. Kings Lynn up against Sheffield. That starts at 7:30 at the Adrian Flux Arena. Artem Laguta is back in the side. Kings Lynn also have Ben Barker guesting for Michael Palm-Toft. Sheffield otherwise full strength, I believe. And Leicester take on the Peterborough Panthers. That's pretty much, I think, as usual with the light team lineups there. Kings Lynn versus Sheffield will be live on BSN Thursday night. Looking ahead to the fixtures on Monday in the Sports Insure Premiership, Kings Lynn hosting Peterborough. That is surely a must-win for both sides, really, but particularly for Kings Lynn on their home circuit. Sheffield hosting Ipswich. Crucial on that. Ipswich a fair way ahead on the points situation as well. At aggregate, Sheffield 39, Ipswich 51. And it's Wolves and Belle Vue. Wolves have got a big amount of points to catch up on that one, 33-57. Of course, that first clash at the National Speedway Stadium happened last week. So those are Monday's fixtures in the Sports Insure Premiership. Well, whilst it's disappointment in the league table for the Peterborough Panthers, well, it was a bit of joy for Panthers fans last Thursday, as the Peterborough Panthers got themselves straight through to the final of the Premiership pairs at Leicester. But it was the Belle Vue Aces through Dan Bewley and Brady Kurtz who dominated the closing stages of the meeting and proved victorious in the grand final up against the Peterborough Panthers, who, with Richie Worrall in outstanding form, got straight through to that grand final. Bewley and Kurtz, though, got the better of Sheffield's Jack Holder and Tobias Musilak in a Roses battle in the semi-final before making fast starts in the final to defeat Worrall and Ben Cook. Well, after the meeting and before the trophies were presented, we heard from all three of the pairs lineup, because of course there was rising stars included in this as well. Dan Bewley and Brady Kurtz and Jake Mulford speaking to Hayley Bromley on BSN.
Dan, real quick, how does it feel?
Yeah, it's awesome. I think great result for the three of us, and everyone in the pits too. It's awesome for me, being back at Belle Vue and to win something straight away. It's pretty cool. So yeah.
Brilliant. Brady Kurtz, what can we say there? Captain Fantastic, happy with that?
Yeah, really happy. I think I wasn't doing the best during the meeting, but then come the semi-final and the final, I got the bike together, made some good starts, and it was nice to be out front, look back and see Dan right there, and really happy with it.
Jake, real quick thoughts on this, being part of this?
Yeah, it was really good to be a part of it. They both done really well, and for me, I'm glad I did save that too. So yeah, it was a really good night, and I'm glad to be a part of a team that's going so well. So it's really good.
And best wishes to Jake Mulford as well, because over the course of the weekend following that meeting, he was involved in the European Grass Track Championships, and he was actually avoiding another rider who'd fallen in front of him, and he ended up getting run over and broke his ankle. So he's set to be on the sidelines now for probably around 6 weeks or so, which is obviously a bit of a setback to him and to his teams, the Belle Vue Aces and the Red Car Bears. So he'll soon, Jake Mulford, who was making great progress up until that point, of course, but hope to see him back very soon indeed. OK, the next part of No Breaks, No Fear, we concentrate on the Kings Lynn Stars. It's been a turbulent year for the Stars, with a change of personnel both in the team and at the top of the club as well. With a new manager coming in, Dave Hoggart takes the reins for the rest of the season, who's no stranger to many Speedway fans, particularly those involved with Sheffield or Workington, and you might recognise him from the Fan Zone at Cardiff as well, which he's hosted, I think, pretty much since the Fan Zone began as part of the British Grand Prix. We'll speak to Dave Hoggart next on No Breaks, No Fear.
No Breaks, No Fear, the official British Speedway podcast.
Welcome back. I'm Ian Brannan. This is the official podcast of British Speedway, and in the second part of our episodes, we like to have a longer chat with someone who's in the news for whatever reason at the particular point in time that we're recording them. And our next guy has taken on a big challenge of being the Kings Lynn team manager. Now, Dave Hoggart is no stranger to Speedway. He's been a team manager before with the Sheffield Tigers. He's been a co-promoter. He's the centre green announcer, has been the centre green announcer at Sheffield, at Workington. He runs the Fan Zone at Cardiff. He's got a lot of experience, and now he's taking on this job, having been out of the sport for 4 years. And when I say being out of the sport, Dave, you've not really been to any meetings at all. You've stepped well away from it. So what a job to come back to in taking on this role of being the team manager of the Kings Lynn Stars at this moment in time.
Well, of course. I mean, everything that I've done in Speedway in the past has been thoroughly enjoyable. But as you're probably aware, and other people that have been involved in the sport are aware, it can consume you and take over your life. And surprisingly enough, there is a life away from Speedway. The main reason that I took time out was to focus on my career, or the end of my career. I'm retired now. But I've always been in challenging roles, particularly over the last 30 years. In the motor industry, and it was becoming more and more demanding, and it was very clear that if I had sustained my involvement in Speedway, something was going to have to give. Didn't particularly want my health to give, and of course without a daytime job you don't pay the mortgage, so I decided to take a time out and focus on my career, and that's what I did.
And that is right, isn't it? You've been away for a few years and you haven't been to many meetings. I think I'm right in saying somebody told me that they'd seen you at Redcar versus Poole the other week. I mean, by the way, what a meeting to come back to. But so that was one of your first meetings, really, in that space of time back in Speedway.
Absolutely. I did the Centre Green presentation at Workington until they closed in 2018. I was all geared up to do 19 at Workington, but as you possibly recall, Workington ceased on the eve of the season. That gave me more time out. The reason I did Workington is because it was a Saturday track and it didn't impact on the day job at all. So that was cool in that sense. It was a thoroughly enjoyable time at Workington. Fabulous people up there. When it came to going to Speedway again, I didn't really have the appetite for it. Now, this happens to everybody that gets involved in the sport. You know, every now and again, that time comes where you just think, what am I doing? So again, I was able to take time out. I was going through a divorce as well at that time, which had its own challenges. And everybody that's been there knows that too. So I took, which was Redcar versus Edinburgh, which was curtailed after 12. Matthew Weathers got injured, and then another rider got injured. Two ambulances needed, so the meeting was off. I went to Torren with IMG in 2019, which was a great meeting. They looked after me very, very well. And then Red versus Poole, as you say, which was probably one of the best Speedway meetings I've ever seen. It was absolutely fantastic.
It just had absolutely everything, didn't it? And I know fans of the respective sides, for whatever reason, probably bemoaning the superheat, but that added something extra to it as well. That it was all going to be sorted out in that last heat. And, for the neutral, that was an icing on the cake to a meeting that had already produced everything. People breaking the tapes and dropping off on the very last bend of the last heat. It just had absolutely everything. And yes, I will sound biased by saying you can watch it back on BSN, but you can. And definitely that's one to add to your list if you haven't seen it already. But it's a reminder, Dave, though, of what we're here for and what Speedway is all about.
Very much so. I've always enjoyed racing. I mean, when you're in the pits and involved, you don't see all the racing, but it's an enjoyable event when you just watch pure racing without any of the politics, without any of the rules being manipulated or anything like that. When you just go and watch the riders exercising their skills and doing a great job. And that meeting had that from both teams. I mean, who would have committed to starting a fence at the last knockings like that? I mean, he must have been choked, mustn't he? But hey ho, it's good, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Now on to the job at hand. You're the team manager of the Kings Lynn Stars now, and it's not really gone to plan for Kings Lynn this season. I don't think being second bottom of the table was the initial plan. There's been big investment. Artem Laguta, huge signing, not just for Kings Lynn, but for British Speedway in the side now as well. But other changes, including Josh Pickering moving out, and of course Sheffield next up for Kings Lynn on Thursday. And Josh Pickering gets to come back to ride on his old track. Obviously, he's going to be up for that. When we spoke to Alex Brady the other week, the playoffs were very much the target for the team. Obviously, there's been further defeats since then. Are the playoffs still the target for Kings Lynn?
It's going to be a challenge. I think short term, I've got to focus on trying to get the best out of the guys on the night. We know that Sheffield are going to be a huge challenge on Thursday evening. They absolutely romped away with it the last time they came to Saddlebow. So we're anticipating a tough time. As you've mentioned, that Josh Pickering will intend on doing very, very well at his former club. He's going to be backwards and coming forwards on Thursday. But Sheffield got a team of big track specialists. And, those of them that are riding internationally are used to all the different surfaces, and they will relish the thought of coming to Kings Lynn on Thursday night. So we've got one devil of a challenge on hand for Thursday. So in terms of the rest of the season, the last thing I want to appear is unambitious, but we've just had two new guys join the team as well. Simon Lambert and Anders Rowe have joined the team. I've yet to see them at Kings Lynn in current times, so it's really too soon to form what we want to do. But, we've got to go for every single point. We can't, we've got to be thinking no lost places. And when we're at home, we've got to think about hitting the opposition early, right from the start of the meeting, and maximising those opportunities.
We're recording this at the start of the week, on the Monday leading up to this meeting on Thursday. Artem Laguta has been much talked about. Of course, he's been missing for a week or so through this suspension that he's had. Artem Laguta is due to be named in the side for Thursday. Is that still the case? Will Artem Laguta be at the Adrian Flux Arena on Thursday night against Sheffield?
As far as I'm aware, and I've got no reason to think otherwise, Artem will be in the side on Thursday evening against Sheffield. That's the communication we've had. Now, we're recording this a little bit earlier in the week. I'm not expecting anything to change, but it's a Speedway.
What is the situation with Artem Laguta, Dave? Do you know, is he going to be around more regularly? Is he going to be part of the team going forward? And also that situation from a couple of weeks ago, you sort of landed right in the middle of this situation where there was an injury sustained with Chris Harris. Everybody thought he was going to be missing because of that. Then he rides in Poland, and then he's got a sickness bug. In the meantime, Chris Harris is booked to guest. It was all a little bit muddled. And then, of course, Laguta gets this statutory ban, which is what you get, a week ban if you are missing a meeting for a non-Speedway reason. So that's what it was for. It wasn't specifically for him. That's the same for any rider. But it's not really been an ideal time for Laguta. Are things going to be a bit more stable going forward?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, he rides in the British League as well as his other leagues. So there's no reason to believe that he's not going to be with us. It would be fair to say that I've not had any contact with him or his manager directly. Obviously, Alex was the key in that scenario, and Keith had to try and pick it all up last week. But in terms of the information that was communicated from the club last week, and we could only communicate, or Keith could only communicate what he knew. And the last he knew is that Artem had taken that fall in the home meeting. He'd taken a bit of a knock. He was going to practice in the week. And all being well, he would have been with us at Wolverhampton on the Monday evening. So there was some, I'm going to say communication difficulties, not language difficulties, communication difficulties. And he was out of reach for a couple of days. So as a precaution, Keith booked Bomber, or asked Bomber to be, if he would be available, put on standby in the event that Artem didn't come through his practice or for any reason exacerbated his injury when he was due to ride on Sunday. So that's the reason Chris Harris was on standby. And of course, we got a medical note on Monday to say that he wouldn't be coming to this country. He was not well. It was a slightly different scenario to what we were led to believe.
Okay. Well, hopefully we do see him on Thursday then, because he's been brilliant when he has been over here, and as all of those riders of that standard have been, and the things that they bring beyond just the racing, in terms of bringing people through the gates. Michael Palm-Toft has had a bit of an unfortunate incident as well, hasn't he? He's got certainly he's been having surgery on his leg. Can you update us on that, and how does that affect things going forward?
It's too early for a short to medium term prognosis on Michael at the moment. He only had the operation at the end of last week. So we are waiting further advice from Michael, which in turn will come from his medical team. So that's where we're at. The July averages are out, and he is third in our averages now, which potentially puts us in a position where we can book a guest. However, when you look at what's going on Thursday, all 6 clubs are racing. So that leaves us with a very limited choice of guests if we go down that route. I've got a call booked in with Keith later on today, so we can make the decision on which is the best way forward for us.
your relationship with Keith Chapman, of course, is the reason that you are in this role. The two of you have worked, in the BSPA, BSPL days, on many things over the years. So you have a good working relationship there, which obviously must make things a lot easier for you when you're managing a club like this.
I go back a fair way in the sport. Keith goes back a long way at Kings Lynn. We've never had a crossword. We've never fallen out, even with rivalry between the two clubs. And there was a great period of time when we were both in the Premier League where we, took it in terms as clubs knock spots off each other on track. It was funny. It was very enjoyable and very satisfying when you got the win over the other side. We beat them and put them out of trophies. They beat us and put us out of trophies. So it was all good banter at the time. And led to a bit of a warm relationship, particularly when it came to helping out with loan riders or team building. If we wanted one of each other's riders that wasn't going to be used, Keith was always very, very keen to support his riders and get them a job, and never stood in the way. Personally, I don't think Keith gets a fair press. There's an awful lot that Keith does behind the scenes in Speedway still that people don't give him due credit for, probably because he doesn't shout about it.
Yeah, he's leapt to the aid of many clubs over the past, hasn't he? Not just financially to keep them afloat, but also helping out with tracks. And Leicester, for example, he was involved in helping sort Leicester's track out over the winter, just being one sort of example of something else that he's been involved in that maybe people don't see.
Yeah, he's risked an awful lot to support British Speedway. Financially, he's helped other clubs out to stabilise them when they've needed support. He purchased the land and stadium at Kings Lynn and developed it, a massive investment. He thought of this with his own hands. Similarly, he took the job on at the BSPA, as it was then, and became BSPL. And he was very active in supporting clubs behind the scenes. So I rate the guy. He's always been very, very straight with me. And, when his integrity is challenged, he's entitled to take offence. He does, but not from me. It's been a great relationship that I've had with him.
Aside the results on the track, what for you is the biggest challenge of being the team manager of a team that's in the position of Kings Lynn? I'm sort of talking in terms of maybe motivation and getting the team going in the right direction. How do you do that? How do you bind these guys together now to get the most out of them?
Well, I'm not somebody that's going to try and tell them how to ride a motorcycle on a speedway track. In my day, years and years ago, things were very, very different. Limited what you could do. Tracks were very different. We ran engines that revved at 7,500, and now they're running at 13,500, some even higher than that. So it's the sport technically is very, very different. Tracks are very, very different. So it would be immoral of me to try and tell them how to ride their motorbikes. The one thing that I'm pretty good at, or people tell you I'm pretty good at, is communication. So hopefully I can give them a little confidence by talking to them. I'm not someone that's going to give them a hard time when they're not scoring points. I fear that sends people into a downward spiral. What they need is praise, the positives highlighted, the progress highlighted. But I'm very, very fortunate. We've got an excellent captain in Nikolai Clint, who equally shares the responsibility of motivating the guys and pulling it all together in the pits. It's very, very good. It's they're all trying already to improve things and make the job better for Kings Lynn Speedway. I don't perceive that there are any personality challenges in the side. So I've got to be optimistic. I've got to be ambitious that we'll have a good team spirit.
I mean, Nikolai, as an example, he's had such a roller coaster week, really, because he was really struggling at Wolverhampton, as the whole team were. It was a bad night for everyone at Wolves last Monday. And then on Thursday, in the Premiership pairs at Leicester, he scored more than the entire Wolves team. So it was quite a week for him last week.
I wouldn't judge any team that Wolverhampton and lost. Now, it's easy for me to say that today, but I would have said that we've been talking 3 or 4 weeks ago. Wolverhampton is a very, very technical track. And if you were riding Wolverhampton every week, you'd have machinery and engines set up just for Wolverhampton, nowhere else. If you're visiting Wolverhampton twice a year, you would not set an engine up specifically for Wolverhampton. Might if it's a major event or a championship event, but what you wouldn't be doing is taking an engine apart and changing parts internally to ride Wolverhampton. You just got to go there and do your best. So it's exceptionally slick. And I'm talking tabletop slick. You know, the base broke up. There was no drive coming out of the corners, and every single one of our guys, you know, including the reserves, was spinning out of the start and spinning out of the corners. To sort of sum it up without being too critical of the track, but to demonstrate how it was, we had a guest in Chris Harris who scored 1 point. Chris Harris earns most of his points from the back. There isn't a track in this country that he's afraid of and afraid to give it a go on. When someone like Chris Harris cannot come from the back to score points, that gives you an indication of just how slick the track was.
Yeah, it's a good point, well made, Dave. I think if Bombers struggling to make it work, then many others would. Next up for Kings Lynn, then it's Sheffield at the Adrian Flux Arena on Thursday night. The last time the two sides met, the sides are a bit different now as far as Kings Lynn's concerned, because Josh Pickering wasn't riding that day, but he was certainly in the team. He now lines up for Sheffield. Frederick Jakobsen has gone. Jason Edwards has departed. You got Anders Rowe in the side now. And of course, Artem Laguta was on his very first meeting the last time the two sides met. And so it'd be interesting to see how he goes against Sheffield with now a few meetings under his belt.
Yes, obviously it was his first meeting at Kings Lynn, so you would have expected him to be feeling his way around a little bit. He will have had a bit of practice beforehand, that's for sure. I've got a practice organised this week for those riders that can participate. Certainly Anders Rowe's going along there. I'm hoping that Thomas is going to go along there too, and just get themselves familiar. I'll extend the offer to Simon and see if we can get the lower order into the track and get a feel of it before Sheffield come along. It's going to be a challenge. I'm not going to shy away from that. I would love to have this conversation with you on Friday morning and say, wow, what a great night we had last night. One thing's for sure, with Nikolai and Artem in the team, and then you look at what Sheffield have got in their team, there's going to be fireworks on track. The racing should be exceptional. So win or lose, we should see a great Speedway meeting on Thursday.
My thanks to David Hoggart, the new team manager of the Kings Lynn Stars. Of course, if you can't be at the Adrian Flux Arena, the fixture will be live on BSN on Thursday evening. The show starting at 7, first race at 7:30. OK, in the final part of No Breaks, No Fear, we'll hear from Kelvin Tatum. He gives us his review of the action over the last month or so from what he's seen on Eurosport on his tour of the UK, and also looks ahead to the next fixture, which will be the Sheffield Tigers hosting the Ipswich Witches in a crucial battle for the fourth playoff place as it stands. So we'll hear from Kelvin Tatum in the next part and look ahead to what's coming up in the Championship and the National Development League as well in the next part of No Breaks, No Fear.
No Breaks, No Fear. The official British Speedway podcast.
In this final section, then, we're going to hear a little bit from Kelvin Tatum. He's got his own podcast out. It's called Tatum Talks, where, guess what? Kelvin Tatum talks about lots of things to do with Speedway. Looking back at the Grand Prix series mainly, but also we touch on the Sports Insure Premiership as well, which he's been covering with Eurosport and Discovery Plus, of course, in the UK. And having a little look at what he's seen with his eyes as part of that coverage and his thoughts on the team's chances at this midway point where we are now. And he starts with the Belle Vue Aces, and, well, he thinks he owes Lemo an apology.
Yeah, they're looking good. I actually had to sort of eat a bit of humble pie when I saw Mark Lemon at Peterborough the other day, because I didn't think they were as strong as they were last year. And the form of Jarman Lidsey in the middle of the team has really been a revelation. He started poorly, without confidence, but he is now rock solid and doing very well for him. Obviously, you've got Brady Kurtz and Bewley piling up the points, and Charles Wright going along nicely. Yeah, Tom Brenner, they're looking very solid. They've picked up valuable points on the road. They won pretty comfortably last night. I saw them at Peterborough, where Peterborough put up a good fight, but Belle Vue just back end of the meeting just proved to be too strong. So the champions are looking like champions right now. They've won the pairs recently at Leicester. So, things are going very well for Mark Lemon and his team. And fair play to them. You know, they are fully deserved to be at the top of the league table.
What about the Leicester Lions? You were at Leicester, you've seen Leicester ride a couple of times on Eurosport, and certainly surprised a few people, I think, both home and away.
Yes, when I heard that Leicester were coming into the team and I spoke to Damien Bates, the co-promoter there, I was concerned about what sort of team they would be able to build. He said, don't worry, we're going to have a decent outfit. He was true to his word. And I think they've overachieved. I think Stuart Dixon, he might not want to admit it, but I think that he is chuffed to bits with the way the team are performing. They've gelled well. They've got experience in the middle order with Lawson and Harris. And now that Frick is scoring plenty of points for them, that is a huge bonus. I think Justin Sedgman, you could argue that Justin Sedgman at times has never ridden better in the UK. So they have got a really good, a solid-looking outfit, and all of a sudden, their form has put a lot of pressure on Sheffield and Wolverhampton and Ipswich. No doubt about it, because I think, in my opinion, that they may have been underestimated a little bit, Leicester, as the new boys, as the rookies, and they have shown great determination, and they've won on the road, they're winning at home. They're looking very solid. So I think that I think it's certainly a surprise to a few people, but they're there on merit, aren't they? And they're doing the business, and they're picking up valuable points and they're a good-looking team. They're a really good-looking team.
It's increasingly looking like it's going to be Sheffield or Ipswich battling it out for this fourth spot in the playoffs as it stands. Ipswich, talk to us about that, because obviously got Emil Saifutinov and Jason Doyle, and they've been terrific. The rest of the side has had its issues from time to time, particularly, of course, with Eric Riss, with also injuries to Jack Thomas early doors as well, which wasn't ideal. So they're maybe not quite as strong throughout as maybe they were hoping they'd be.
Absolutely. And obviously I come into contact with Chris Louis on a regular basis. I just think that when I look at that team, I'm just thinking, well, why are they fifth? But they've had some issues. You could say that the issue with Eric Riss has been a problem. That has definitely been a problem. His health, no fault of anybody's, but his health has created a hole in the team that they struggled to cover for. They lost Jack Thomas before they even started. So I think that even with the form, I think they can do it, and I think a lot of people fancied them to go all the way this year, but it hasn't transpired, and they're going to have to work very hard. They're going to have Saifutinov and Doyle going great guns, and they need Danny King. They need Danny King to be really strong as well. If they can keep those three piling in the points, Keenan Rue is a rider that is going in the right direction. And I think that, Daniel Hume is a real trier. He's certainly totally committed to the cause. But it's not going to be easy. They've slipped behind. They may need Sheffield to slip up as well. But they just need to focus on winning now. They've got to get the team clicking. And if they can get Eric Riss going, I think they've got a chance.
And it's a big one next week on Eurosport, because it's Sheffield versus Ipswich, and the clash of the two that are chasing that playoff spot.
It is, next week. So we've seen Sheffield a couple of times when they were at Leicester and then at Ipswich. Both times they got beaten, but they seem, apart from when Leicester beat Sheffield at Sheffield, which was a stunning result, and that would have stung Simon Stead. He would not have enjoyed that at all. I'm looking forward to going back to Sheffield. Good track, fast track, exciting speedway there generally, and they're up against the Ipswich Witches, so it's a great clash. and it's got a lot riding on it. It was, when I reflect on the meeting Ipswich at home against Sheffield, that was a vital win for the Witches. But now we've got the return leg, so the aggregate points up for grabs as well, I believe. I'm going out on a bit of a limb there. I'm hoping I'm right, but I think the aggregate's up for grabs. And it's two teams that are fighting for their lives to make sure they secure a top 4 spot. So it should be an exciting night.
It is all to race for you, and you're right, the bonus point is up for grabs, and Ipswich are 12 points ahead at the halfway stage there, going into that fixture at Oleton on Monday. Kings Lynn, lots been said about Kings Lynn. Artem Laguta's in the side. We know very well what he's capable of. Big signing, but there just seems to be quite a lot of drama off the track at Kings Lynn now with the new manager Dave Hoggart in charge, and it's been up and down for them, hasn't it, this season?
Not ideal. Not ideal at all. I think that it's been a roller coaster at Kings Lynn. Obviously, Keith Chapman having to come back in after Alex Brady stepping down. Dale Allett is unwell. That's far from ideal. Clearly, Keith Chapman probably wasn't aware of the negotiations and contracts that had been agreed, because effectively it was not his team. Alex and Dale were running the team. And they're struggling, and I think that it's, from Laguta's point of view, I think he's probably done a terrific contract where he's paid handsomely, but when your team's not doing so well and the turnstiles aren't clicking as well, I think economics, possibly Keith Chapman is looking at that thinking, can we really afford him? I don't know that, but you don't have to be Einstein to kind of put those 2 and 2 together. What I will say about Laguta is that when he's been here after one dodgy meeting, he's been pretty solid. He's scored plenty of points, showed his class. Is he in love with British Speedway? Probably not. Not like Saifutinov. Not the same. But still, nonetheless, it was an eye-catching move. Did they overextend themselves? Maybe, and it will be sad if he doesn't finish the fixtures for them, but it's been a tough time for both Peterborough and Kings Lynn, really tough times.
And of course Peterborough still question marks over what's going to happen with them next season. Similar to Wolves, Chris Van Straten working very hard to try and secure a new venue, but also to maybe get some more time at Monmore as well, he was saying in a recent interview on Eurosport. So hopefully that's not the end of the story there.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that is very much the case. Chris Van Straten, he spoke to me about it and saying that he had identified an area where there was a possibility. So I very much hope that they can do it, because we can ill afford to keep losing clubs. We've lost too many in the recent times. So, Wolverhampton, it has a rich history. It's, it's one of the best teams in the league, and to lose them would be a hammer blow. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and if they can run for one more year at Monmore while the new stadium's being readied, then that would be the ideal scenario. Regarding Peterborough and the East of England Arena, I don't know what the situation is there, whether they can be relocated or whether it will roll on for another year. I don't know, but certainly there is uncertainty about the Peterborough Panthers right now. So, as I say, from my perspective, I'm not privy to all the goings on. I just don't want to see clubs closing. Simple as that, because we want to keep a healthy league if we can.
All right, Kelvin, thanks a lot. And looking forward to more Speedway out of the top draw coming up on Monday at Oleton.
Out of the top draw, indeed. Indeed.
Kelvin Tatum, and you can hear more of Kelvin on his own podcast, which is called Tatum Talks. Search for that on any of your podcast apps. Reviewing the Grand Prix so far over the last 3 rounds. We're about the halfway stage there, and also much more info on the things that we're just talking about there as well. All available in a new episode, which is out at the end of this week, if not already by the time you hear this. A little bit of news from the Championship. Fans' favourite Paul Stark is on his way back to Birmingham, with Stefan Nielsen also reintroduced into the starting 7. Stark proved a popular addition at Perry Bar during the ill-fated 2014 campaign and has enjoyed successful returns as part of the opposition since. He was released by Plymouth just over a month ago and has been snapped up by the Curtis Sport Brummies as team boss Stuart Dixon continues to shake up the side. The 32-year-old replaces Joe Thompson, who's sidelined with a broken collarbone. Meanwhile, Stefan Nielsen is back after a period out through injury, with temporary 28-day replacement Dan Thompson now linking up with Cab Direct Championship rivals the Plymouth Gladiators. Stuart Dixon feels the changes give the Brummies much more of a solid look about them, particularly as it's going to see inform Alfie Botel move to reserve for the fixtures in July. So it is a quiet period for the Birmingham Brummies, but there's plenty more fixtures happening in the Cab Direct Championship, and let's have a look at the fixture situation now as it stands over the course of the next week or so in British Speedway. And it is a big week ahead as well. Starting on Wednesday, July 5th, it is big action at Poole Stadium. It is the first leg of the BSN Series final between the Poole Pirates and the Glasgow Tigers. Now, this should have been the second leg, but the first leg was rained off at Glasgow last Friday. So now it becomes the first leg at Poole, with the return leg, I think, a week on Friday back at Ashfield. Cab Direct Championship action as well between Oxford and Berwick. Oxford, of course, untouchable so far in the Cab Direct Championship, but very close on the aggregate bonus point situation between those two. 46-44 there. So lots to race for in that fixture. Thursday evening, then it's action in the Sports Insure Premiership. Ipswich versus Wolverhampton, Leicester versus Peterborough, and Kings Lynn versus Sheffield, with that one at the Adrian Flux Arena also live on BSN. Friday night in the Cab Direct Championship, it's Glasgow versus Redcar. We've got Scunthorpe versus Edinburgh as well in the Cab Direct Championship. National Development League action between Belle Vue and Kent. And British Youth Championships take place at Scunthorpe after the championship fixture against Edinburgh, with the 500cc riders getting together in that one at Scunthorpe on Friday night. Saturday, National Development League Knockout Cup semi-final first leg between Workington and Leicester. That starts at 3 o'clock at Workington. And on Sunday, it's National Development League action for Mildenhall, who host the Edinburgh Academy from 4 p.m. Looking ahead then to Monday, back to the Sports Insure Premiership. Kings Lynn versus Peterborough, Sheffield versus Ipswich, which is your live fixture on Eurosport, and Wolves versus Belle Vue, all starting at 7:30. And then next Tuesday in the Cab Direct Championship, it is a long trip for me, not least, I would think also for the fans and riders and staff of the Glasgow Tigers, who head down to the south coast, very, very south coast, to Devon for the Plymouth Gladiators against the Glasgow Tigers. That gets underway at 7 p.m. at the Coliseum, and that will be on BSN as well. So that's your next week ahead in British Speedway. There's a high chance that this episode next week, this podcast next week, will come indeed from the Coliseum, because that's probably where I'm going to have to make it, if I'm truly honest. So I'll join you then, and have a great week in Speedway. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with you next week on No Brakes, No Fear.
No Brakes, No Fear, the official British Speedway podcast.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.